feels a bit like Christmas, this anticipation of each trap, you know, like, oh, what's going to be in there? I feel like a little kid on Christmas morning.
"1,300 kilometres from Sydney, in the corner of New South Wales, where the sun is harsh and the dirt is bone dry, a team of scientists is returning residents to the desert."
So we've got a golden bandicoot, guys. So this is a male. So they have incredibly large testes for their small size. Maybe that's why they're such good breeders.
Over the last few years, 7 native species of mammals have been bred and then released in protected enclosures at Sturt National Park.
We're going to see what we've got next. Oh, wow. It's a burrowing bettong.
All the animals once called this arid landscape home, but have been locally extinct for more than a century.
How exciting. So we have our second threatened species for you guys to meet this morning.
This is the Wild Deserts Project. 7:30 joined a convoy of stakeholders checking in on its progress.
Some of the stuff we're looking at is the condition of the animals and whether they're breeding post-release. So that's a pretty sizable bettong.
The burrowing bettong is measured and examined.
Oh yeah, we've got a beep.
And then set free.
It's still going.
Wild Deserts is a big ecosystem restoration project. So we're trying to return a really large patch of Australia's arid zone back to how it was before European colonisation, which brought all of these big changes to the area.
It's taken years of work. The project started back in 2016.
The first thing you want to do is make these safe havens. So you've got to remove not only all the cats and foxes, but also the rabbits out of there. And that was a huge job.
Then came releasing the animals one species at a time.
The first species that we returned are what we call our ecosystem engineers. So they were the bilbies. They come in, they dig for their food, they dig for their shelters, and they start to turn over the soil in the ecosystem. We get more plant growth, we get water collecting in those holes, and suddenly your ecosystem starts to come to life.
From there, the others followed, with an apex predator released a few months ago.
The western quoll basically is the last piece of the puzzle here. It's really how do we get that food web that was here 100 years ago. If you have missing layers, they can just take over the place, eat themselves out of house and home. So it's really important to reconstruct that whole food chain so that you've got a way of actually having the system much more in balance.
The carnivore was bred out of Taronga Western Plains Zoo.
We take a small number out of the wild in Western Australia, then we do the genetics and we control the breeding so that we have a really good genetic output.
But not every animal was successful.
One of them didn't take off, stick-nest rats, but the other 6 are going gangbusters. What we think happened was that the type of habitat here, even though it used to be here, was just not quite what it was expecting.
The Wild Deserts Project is not just about bringing these species back to this national park. Beyond the enclosures, there is a 100 square kilometre fenced area known as the Wild Training Zone, where a very small number of feral cats are allowed to roam.
So the Wild Training Zone is a halfway house. We're keeping predator numbers low so that these animals can learn what these predators are without every single one of them being eaten. And that's a really important step for us, because if we can train these animals to avoid the introduced predators, then we can take what we've got as success inside fences and put that into the larger landscape.
You can't just go from no cats and foxes to areas that have full-on cats and foxes, because everything gets smashed.
The bilby population has thrived inside the enclosures, and now the research team is moving some into the Wild Training Zone.
So beautiful. Oh, wow.
Research has shown that bilbies can change their behaviour within a year to avoid an introduced predator. There is also evidence that suggests within a few generations they can change physically to help them survive as well.
So the better traits for being able to avoid predators were passed on, which is, fantastic for being able to use this technique to actually change your whole population.
Australia has the worst mammal extinction record in the world, and 2/3 of those losses are due to the predation of cats and foxes. At the moment, there is no long-term solution for the control of cats.
The team is constantly tracking the native species while also keeping cats at bay with devices like the Felix grooming trap.
This targets cats because it delivers a dose of 1080 as the cat walks past the trap, lands on the side of the cat, and they groom that off, and then that kills them.
The poison gel, known as 1080, is derived from Australian plants, so the native wildlife have a natural tolerance, unlike introduced species.
That's combined with spotlight shooting and trapping and also baiting that we can use.
The federal government has put $60 million towards feral cat control.
We want to see Felix cat traps rolled out. We want to investigate how we better use drone technology to identify cats in the landscape. We're also looking at gene-based technologies to reduce the breeding rates of cats in the future.
Feral cats kill more than 1.5 billion native animals every year. State funding for this project ends in 2026, but the team is hopeful its work will continue on.
We don't have a solution to remove every cat from the whole of Australia, so we're going to need this sort of, two-way approach where we're continuing to improve our control of feral cats, and we're also trying to improve the response of our species so that we can get this coexistence at a big scale.
These places used to be absolutely alive. And, we see that even now when we come out here. The places where we don't have cats and foxes, it's amazing. So that's the goal. If we can do that for Australia, it would be fantastic.